Very good morning and welcome to yet another day to be thankful and alive, grateful for all of God's blessings and numerous opportunities that He has entrusted unto us. Of course, this is Rise and Shine Thursday edition coming to you live on Spectrum Television. We're broadcasting live on Star Times DTH channel 421, and you can be part of our online community, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTVLive.ng. Of course, the phone lines are also very much open for direct conversations and messaging via WhatsApp and calls within the course of our program this morning. And you all have to continue being there because, yes, we're here because of you and you are the most important personality. As usual, we will be here doing justice to all of the things that have happened within and outside the shores of Nigeria within the course of the last 24 hours. Not forgetting, my name is Francis Oyima Aided. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It is a beautiful Thursday morning to be alive. A great day to rise and shine wherever you are. Thank God for life. Everything is fine. My name is Uyai Anyekan, and it's going to be another great day of talking Nigeria. We know the saga that is making the rounds, the most topical conversation. I mean, every day we'd like to say that we want to know what your thoughts are regarding that particular issue. But of course, the president's released result from the CSU is one of the most topical conversations that is going on around now, and a lot of controversy, is around that. Some of the new issues that the release of that particular result has brought about. But then, of course, we cannot do this without you. Thank you for being a part of the Rise and Shine family this morning. Let's talk Nigeria and let's get your opinion on several issues that are bothering the country this morning. Take advantage of our social media platforms and also our WhatsApp number. Would like to get your thoughts on these issues.
Well, of course, we'd like to get your thought, but I think the president's release result has generated a lot more, and I find it a little bit disturbing. And I join the parts of Nigerians who are not so sure why we're having so much power, so much energy, so much investment on the part of the president, trying to not allow the result to surface in the public glare. I mean, we're living in a country where we're living in a country where you're going for a job interview or you're even applying for a job, your CV alongside your result, the photocopies of your result and all the certificate that you've acquired within the course of your life is attached to that CV. And that's the first document that, potential employers get to, in contact with, get to know you with. And then from there is where you get invited for interview. And at the end, in the event that you are hired, you will, of course, have to present, the originals of those documents that you presented. So it's crazy. It's a bit of filled with mixed feelings for Nigerians to see that the number one citizen is putting so much investment into stopping, Atiku Abubakar from getting the result in the first place. And then, of course, from after getting the result, we are seeing a lot of energy, a lot of comments, credited to top government officials who are making it look like, the president's result is inconsequential to the personality of the president. But we are still in this same country where if you don't have a certificate, it's literally like you didn't attend school, you didn't do anything, you're not qualified to hold any, government office, you're not qualified, to even be employed by the government. I know that the different recruitment processes that have been rolled out by different agencies of government, there are specific criteria attributed to your academic qualifications. You see, first school living certificate, you see for only people who have an ND or for people who have HND, for people who have BSc, for people who have masters, and all of those, criteria that are being listed out. But here, we're talking about the number one citizen of this country called Nigeria. And this should be the one person whose academic record should not be an hidden fact. This is one person whose academic records, in fact, whose entire academic history should be in the public space for everyone, to have access to. But we are having so much force, so much issues, so much, controversy surrounding it. And it's it's already. I think yesterday I read of a university outside the shores of Nigeria who has banned, collecting applications from Nigerian students. So it's already beginning to tell its signs on Nigerians. So for that country, it means Nigerian students are no longer going to be accepted into the university because there is a controversy surrounding the number one citizen of the country.
There's a lot of problem that this is going to generate in the overall, but these are conversations that we are going to have, of course, in-depthly later on the show this morning, because it's more like a misrepresentation. Some of the concerns that Nigerians are putting forward, for instance, if this was to be happening in the United Kingdom, before you would have woken up tomorrow morning, before Nigerians would have woken up this morning, they would have seen a resignation from whichever principal officer that was. But at the end of the day, it's more like it is only the Supreme Court that can actually say, this is this or this is that about, this certificate saga. Right now, I think I was listening to someone yesterday, and he was explaining this is not an issue that we can just converse about on the streets of social media and all of that. The Supreme Court are the ones that will eventually be able to say, okay, this is the weight that this certificate has brought. Are there a lot of irregularities that have been established as a result of finding this? Yes, of course. We'll get into the belly of this conversation, but that is more like the most trending, political conversation of the day in Nigeria. Mr. President released certificate from the Chicago State University. Is it in alignment with the one that he submitted to INEC? A lot of questions are being asked. Do we have a male, was it a male or a female Tinubu in this case? So there's a lot of things, and this is, like you said, raising a lot of questionable ideas in the eyes of other foreign nations. And I hope that I know that the social media can be funny before we even get to the point of saying, oh yes, a lot of countries are already beginning to consider not allowing Nigerian students. I hope that is as I don't know how to say. I hope that is not true in all of its essence. I hope there are not countries taking that. It's really going to be hasty.
Well, it's not hasty. If you look at the situation of things playing out in Nigeria over the last decades, we've had different scenarios of public officials, having issues with their, the academic records, with their certificates and all of that. So, will this country be wrong if they begin to take those actions? Absolutely no, because it's been going on. So, this will be like the master or the king of all the issues when it comes to certificate fraud or conversations around inadequacies in certificates. But we know that the CSU, actually the chancellor of the CSU as of yesterday, did testify that the Ahmed Bola Tinubu that attended their school is the one that is now the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But what Nigerians are deeply concerned about is why, on the part of the president, on the part of the president's legal team, there is so much investment, so much energy put into blocking those records from surfacing on the internet or surfacing in the public space for every Nigerian and indeed anybody to grace. I just had to go back. I think that was Campbell's University. I said, due to high rates of fraudulent applications, Campbell's University has suspended processing of new applications for students from Nepal, Nigeria, and Bangladesh. Applications from these countries are immediately rejected upon submission. That's from the university, quoted from the university side. So these are issues that would immediately begin to surface. But then one will also ask, why would the university take that steps? I mean, there are 1,000 ways that you can authenticate and validate a person's academic records. So for you to now wake up just because there are controversies surrounding a president's academic records, you bar the generality of the nationals from gaining access to study. That is I don't know what could we should term that. Should we term it racism, or we should term it exploitation or marginalization? But definitely everything about that move by the school is completely out of place.
It's really hasty. It's really, really hasty. because I mean it's been barely 24 hours since we've continued to have this conversation. For us to see any kinds of barrings at this time would be too early. I mean it's literally this whole certificate conversation in some quarters it still feels like it's a hush hush conversation, in the meantime, but then it's out there. We have that particular certificate statement there by the CSU out there. Everyone is seeing it, but the questions still continue. But let's do a quick swipe at some of the things that are happening before we get back into. Of course, we'll have a guest that will be talking about the whole Chicago State University issue this morning. What are our thoughts as Nigerians? If you want us to know what to think about this particular situation, like we said earlier, take advantage of our social media platforms. But let's take a quick rush first to our flash news for this morning. Yesterday, we had talked about the fact that about 263 Nigerians in Ethiopia were complaining of being handled in a different way from other nationals in the prison custody of a particular city in Ethiopia. But as of this morning, we also see the fact that the Senate has moved to investigate the alleged killings and imprisonment of over 250 Nigerians in Ethiopia. Remember, yesterday's issue was related to some drug-related issues, but we also see that this followed a motion titled "Urgent Need to Investigate the Unlawful Killings and Incarceration of Over 250 Nigerians in Ethiopia." Of course, it was sponsored by the Minority Leader, Senator Simon Makwong, member of People's Democratic Party, representing Plateau North, and Senator Victor Ume, member of the Young Progressives Party, representing Anambra Central, presenting the motion. Now, Makwong urged the Senate to direct the committees on diaspora and foreign affairs to work with the federal government to immediately constitute a committee to visit the Republic of Ethiopia with a view to investigating what is happening to Nigerians in the foreign land. This is quite serious at this time. He also called on the federal government to immediately direct the Ethiopian embassy to collaborate with the delegation of the Senate committees on diaspora and foreign affairs to find a lasting solution to problems being faced and or encountered by Nigerians who are held in Ethiopia. So it looks like, because yesterday we're trying to give a balance between, if Nigerians are caught in the quagmire of drug-related issues, then they must face, the wrath of the law in Ethiopia as it were. Of course, we expect that the Ethiopian government would do this in guidelines with regards to international relations and international guidelines for nationals within their nation. But it looks like there is more problems happening here. If there are reports of about 250 Nigerians being killed without explanations and some of them incarcerated, it's really a heinous activity, and it's important that the Senate has made this move to actually investigate. Let us know if some people are just crying foul for no reason, or if there is a real serious issue here to be unearthed by the Nigerian government.
Well, it's a beautiful step taken by the National Assembly, we must say, and we must commend them. But when you look at so far how much directive the National Assembly has given to the federal government, how many of them have been, obeyed, how many of them have been followed through with actions and implementation on the part of the federal government, it raises a lot of concerns. It raises a lot of questions. Will these actually be seen through? Will there be implementation of the directive of the National Assembly? Yes, we know, as far as Ethiopia is concerned, as far as Nigerian nationals are concerned, as far as being convicted of crime is concerned, you definitely will lose some measures of your rights and privileges in whichever country of the world you are in. But regardless of that, we know that in as much as Nigerians have committed crimes, we do not cite them for the crimes that they must have committed and led them to the incarceration. But then, while in the prison custody is also mandated by international laws that no one nation or no one national is treated differently compared to how others who have also committed that same crime or are also in that prison are being treated. So if indeed Nigerians are being treated differently in Ethiopia, it's a great cause for concern. But beyond that, Nigerians would expect that as the federal government partners with Ethiopia and the Ethiopian embassy in Nigeria, There should be that level of collaboration that allows for independent investigation. And whatever team is going to be set up by the federal government should be people who are seasoned technocrats, people who are committed to humanitarian services, people who are more on the side of justice, truth, fairness, and equity, other than just politicians who would go in and then come out and issue statement when for a fact there is truly something happening. So the inquiry should be done in accordance with the best international laws and practices. And if we must say, for any country of the world to mistreat another national at this point, with world leaders that they just concluded United Nations General Assembly calling for a collaborative effort, calling for synergy, calling for building of bridges across nations to ensure that war is completely wiped out on the surface of the earth. And then, of course, nations begin to partner in dialogue, begin to partner to ensure that the continent across the different world is being addressed, and issues of concerns that would have pitched us against each other are also being addressed. So it's a nice move made by the National Assembly, but beyond the move, also Nigerians will want to see a timeline being put to it. It's not just enough for the National Assembly to say, okay, federal government institute a committee, let's have this thoroughly investigated, and of course come out with a verdict or come out with findings. These committees should be given a timeline. There should be a time limit for Nigerians to know, okay, in the next 1 month we're going to have the federal government's committee set up, investigations done. And if for any reason the investigations are extended past the deadline that had been set, the committee should also be able to put Nigerians in the know on a daily basis of what their findings are and what the situation is at the present.
Well, we see that the Nigerian Constitution, especially sections 33, 34, and 35 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, has already shown how Nigerians should be treated within and outside the shores of this nation. And I think that the bedrock of part of this issue is the fact that most of the persons that have been incarcerated in Ethiopia, there has been no direct reason as to why they were incarcerated. So it's more like just having Nigerians in the prison walls, and you cannot state why exactly they are there. So this actually does, show that there is need for investigation to be done. You can't just take Nigerians without stating what exactly they had done wrong. So it's important that the Foreign Affairs Ministry does actually go in and let us put a hang on what this issue is. 250 is a lot of number out of Nigeria. Let's not forget that Nigerians, even in Nigeria, are facing hardship. We shouldn't see that Nigerians are experiencing the same thing outside the shores of this nation. But it's good that this move is done, and let's hear what the National Assembly is going to come up with, like you said, hopefully in the next couple of days. But of course, we have continued to see how the use of firearms in this country has led to one disaster or the other. Several questions are being asked, but we see that the NSCDC is warning its members, its officers, against misusing of firearms in the country. It's more like when the firearms is in the hands of any officer, they take on a new identity that we don't know, where the control buttons are being pressed. But the Commandant, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Federal Capital Territory Command, Olushola Odumosu, yesterday warned 280 personnel of the Corps against accidental discharge. Over the last couple of months, running into a year, we've had several issues of this accidental discharge story in Nigeria. Well, he gave the warning at the opening ceremony of a 3-day training for the armed squad unit of the command in Abuja. And I know that part of the conversation also in Nigeria that you will hear Nigerians asking is which agencies of security in Nigeria are allowed to use firearms, or which ones are not allowed to use firearms. We know that, for instance, the FIRSC they do not use firearms in the country, and now with this statement, it's clear that there is a special unit within the NSCDC that is allowed to use firearms, and trainings are done accordingly. But indiscriminate discharge of fire maybe against a situation. Now this is the warning that the commandant is also charging the personnel of and asking for diligence in their duty and professional. They ought to be professional in duty with regards to handling firearms.
Well, firearms release, unexpected firearm release, what will you call it? Accidental discharge,
Mm.
as the case may be. That's just accidental discharge is a fine name given to act of indiscipline, act of
Mm.
unprofessionalism, act of criminality carried out by members of the armed forces of Nigeria across board, and it's not just limited to NSCDC. It cuts across. You're talking about trigger happy fingered security personnel, and you ask certain questions. It's literally like once people, personnel of the armed forces, put on the uniform, that carry the weapons that they carry, they feel like some demigod that the gun gives them some level of immunity, the uniform gives them absolute immunity. So they believe most times, to some of them believe they can do and undo, and there is nothing the average Nigerians can do to seek justice or remedy the situation. But unfortunately, that is the mindset of some individuals. It's like the concept or the proverbial saying that power or absolute power intoxicates and blinds. So you find a security personnel, handling a gun and maybe asking a question that is not within his purview to ask a Nigerian. And a Nigerian respond, possibly one who knows his or her right, like, okay, this is not within your purview to ask that question. So why should I answer, or why are you asking? I need a reason why you're asking me questions that you shouldn't be asking, for me to be able to answer. It's like the scenario where the Nigerian police force will tell you there are no stops and such, along the road. But when there are situations that arise that you should obey the police or the security agencies, and then you find, security agents stopping people on the road, and instead of going straight to the processes they're supposed to be looking out for, they're going for something else. I recall, a scenario that played out somewhere, just driving along, and then when you're driving at night, there are professional ways for the security agencies to flag you down with a torchlight, and it's not supposed to be pointed directly into the screen of the driver. I recall having a scenario that played out. The torchlight was pointed right into the driver's face, and he almost lost control. But of course, upon being able to stabilize the car, the first question the driver asks is, "Sir, why would you point the torchlight directly into my face? I could have hit you or hit your next colleagues, and this would be a different case scenario playing out." And the first reaction that came from the police officer was to slap the driver. So then you ask the question, why should you slap a driver? Why should you slap the next Nigerian? Because he's asking you a question over something you have done wrong. So it goes to the level of conversations Nigerians have been asking. The Nigerian police force, the Nigerian security forces needs a lot of consistent training. For those who have not taken time to read, I mean, we are in a country where people don't spend time to read terms and conditions, let alone read the guidelines, the rule book that guides the profession most times. So it goes back to training, it goes back to warning such as the commandant has given, but most importantly, it also needs to go down to punitive measures put in place for people who go about, being happy fingered. And we've seen, circumstances where drivers are killed on the highways because a security personnel demanded or asked a question, and the driver maybe hesitated, and the next thing you're hearing, boom, the gun went off and somebody's dead, or a passenger, a driver. But at the end of the day, a Nigerian life is wasted just because somebody was not professional enough. I often ask, how is it that police officials outside the shores of Nigeria, not like they don't make their own mistakes, but how is it that mostly they conduct themselves, with almost sense of professional courtesy for the people? You find a policeman pulling you over outside the shores of Nigeria, and they'll be asking you questions quietly, peacefully, one step after the other. But here, it's literally like the security agencies look like the most Nigerians do not even have the right to be Nigerians and shouldn't be seen on the road. I remember a very funny incident, just walking. Oh, okay, I was inside the car, and then they stopped. And then the policeman looked at me and said, "You look like a foreigner. Can I see your identity card?" And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, okay, so literally just seeing a light-skinned person makes me a foreigner. So it's a crazy situation that we really need these kinds of warning going out from the leadership of the armed forces across board, and we need them to follow through with actions to put an end to people who still feel like with or without the warnings they can do as they please as long as they have the control button.
Well, it's important that that this has been sent out. Of course, the commandant has said after the training they are going to be deployed to different areas of the FCT. Very well in recent times, we know that there's been lots of reports of insecurity related issues, one chance operations, all kinds of things happening in the FCT. And for every of our viewer that is in the Federal Capital Territory, please do take your security measures very importantly. Get the spit down numbers of the security agencies within the FCT. Report any kinds of activities that you see around you that is suspicious at this time. Of course, we must also commend the fact that our security agencies in the country are trying their best to make sure that we are safe the best possible way that we can. But if you remember very well, about 2 years ago, a new currency was introduced in Nigeria, an e-naira currency. It was really clamored about. There were all kinds of suggestions by economists within the sector saying how well this was good for the nation or how bad it was going to impact on the economic situation of Nigeria. After flagging that off under the leadership of the then President Muhammadu Buhari, we seemed not to hear so much about the e-naira again, because it was more like Nigerians were, to be able to trade and transact without having cash on, just some kinds of transaction, have the e-naira in the wallet, and then you're able to operate with it. But so far so good. That is not even a conversation that dominated the economic market in terms of naira circulation. Even at the time that there was a cash crunch in the country, we did not necessarily hear the e-naira becoming the next option or go-to for people in the country. But now there is a new CBN report that has surfaced, and it's given the fact that there are concerns about Nigeria's central bank digital currency, the e-naira, indicating potential risk to financial stability, despite its success in narrowing the country's financial inclusion gap. It's more like there are, people that are taking advantage of the e-naira, but it's not something that is out there, for the general population of the country. Of course, this e-naira was instituted during the former central governor's dispensation, Godwin Emefiele, who brought about several kinds of moves within the central bank, and it's set to mark its second anniversary this October. But of course, the central bank is saying that this might affect how economic activities are done, how the stability of certain transactions, even the impact of the e-naira on forex. Now it's more like the country is floating a lot of financial and economic currencies at the same time, that is fighting all of how stable our economy needs to be. But this is a stability risk due to the conversion of bank deposits into e-naira. So it's more like when Nigerians set their monies in the banks, is converted to e-naira, and they are saying that this may become a problem in time to come.
Well, of course, it's a different scenario. I know that Nigerians were a bit not very much enthusiastic about the e-naira when it was launched.
Yeah.
And a lot of conversations had rose about the fact that Nigeria was not even ready for the launch of the e-naira. And part of the conversations Nigerians were advocating for at the moment was, rather than attempt to launch an e-naira, why not formulate policies that will allow the naira to perform, better with its power? Talking about the dollar and other national currencies. Of course, the CBN governor, as at then Godwin Emefiele, told Nigerians that that was the new thing and that was the way to go, and it was going to bring about a lot of transformational changes in the financial sector. Of course, during the cash crunch, that issue surfaced. That should have been the best option Nigerians had to resort to. But of course, for the e-naira, of course, you're looking at internet connection. You're looking at being on having network connection. You're looking at connectivity. You're looking at ease of doing transaction on the internet, which of course had been a major issue. We have not forgotten in a hurry how, apart from Nigerians having to buy naira with naira, a lot of transactions during the cash crunch period, the transitional period, was a very serious concern, that you make transfer to people and it would take days for it to go. And some never went up until now. You cannot trace whether the money got to the assigned designation or it got stuck somewhere, or somebody somewhere took the money and the receiver didn't get it, but the sender had lost the money within the course of a transaction. Many issues are still lying unresolved across different banking halls in this country, and Nigerians have gotten tired of even continuing to pursue those cases. Part of the reasons why many would say, if you want to really have access to your money or really want to take control of your money, the bank is no longer the safest place for you to go to. I mean, where you sit down in your house without giving out your details to people, and then you wake up to see monies that disappearing from your account, it raises a whole lot of questions, a lot of concerns. But it's a new eye opener, it's a new twist. It's coming timely because we just have a new CBN governor, and in the event that this is coming, it is also very crazy that we are having the report coming from the CBN itself, because this is the people who were responsible for launching the e-naira in the first place. They were the ones who told Nigerians this is the best way to go. So waking up 2 years later to tell us that, oh, this is going to harm the financial sector, is like, contradictions coming from the same institution, which therefore means the CBN, under the leadership of Godwin Emefiele, did not do a proper homework before bringing out this policy, which means they did not do due diligence before bringing out the policy, which means a lot of things that should have been looked into must have been, swept under the carpet, or probably they were just another avenue for money to be siphoned by people in the ranks and cadres of government offices. But of course, this also has raised a different concerns on the part of the Nigerian people. Let's have Godwin Emefiele tell Nigerians why 2 years after the e-naira policy that he touted would be a game changer is now being seen as a problem to the Nigerian financial sector. So that's a lot of conversations panning out. I would like to see beyond the CBN report. Let's get to find out what actually did happen. If the CBN governor and his team did a good homework, what changed within that 2 years after the launch has been done? What necessitated, something that should have brought transformation in a good way to Nigeria financial sector now being seen as a threat?
The issue and the big question of homework being done by the central bank at the time under the leadership of Godwin Emefiele is beginning to reoccur a lot, especially because we even saw before the new central bank governor was instituted, there was someone acting in an acting capacity, and a lot of questions were even brought up with regards to the redesign of the naira. And the biggest question still was, didn't they consider all of these loopholes before moving ahead to do them? Of course, these things were there at the time. It was more like it was Nigerians versus the CBN, but then a new leadership arises, and they are the ones poking holes in the things that they were, sub leaders under, Godwin Emefiele to bring about. But I think surprising numbers with regards to the e-naira is that we see the liquidity of the e-naira standing in the banking sector at about 0.1%, rising and fluctuating between 0.1 and 0.2% in several months between, May of 2022 up till August. But then we also see that this impact rises when the naira put into the bank is converted into e-naira. But I think the biggest concern here is that once these monies are converted into e-naira, once customers deposit monies, it is now impossible, makes it more difficult for commercial banks to be able to convert and lend money. So it's more like there are financial activities that are fighting it's. And then some of the conversations that I have been listening to economic people recently talking about the naira and forex in the country. We really need to sit down and do fresh work with regards to how we are operating in the naira in the country. And it even goes beyond just Nigeria. The dependence of Africa on foreign exchange, on another man's currency, is alarming. we would need to go back to some of the issues that were raised by our founding fathers, some African leaders. I mean, within the AFCTA, the African Free Trade Union arena, the one currency issues raised in Africa. Maybe then we'll be able to have a currency of our own that can help us float. But at the rate that we are going, we need a lot more work to be done in the financial sector.
Well, we need a lot more work, but I think at this point it's about time we look into some of the comments coming from His Excellency Peter Obi, the Labour Party presidential candidate. I watched a conversation about the e-naira and issues surrounding the economy, and part of the concerns raised are things that Nigerians have been talking about. Recall during the just concluded elections from the primaries, politicians were, whatever entitlement they gave or whatever name they gave to it, appreciating delegates in dollars, not in naira.
Exactly.
You go around the streets, it's literally becoming a thing of pride that even on the social media, even the so-called social media influencers, they don't throw money around in naira, they throw it around in dollars. So it's becoming like a thing of status, a thing of prestige, a thing of class, that if you belong to a certain class or if you want to be seen as belonging to a certain class, then you don't have to throw money in parties in naira, you have to throw it in dollars. And as posited by Peter Obi, all of this goes back to affecting or putting more pressure on the Nigerian currency. When you choose to do a lot more business with other people's currency, it means your own currency is further being depreciated. So to the extent that politicians no longer care about utilizing the Nigerian currency, people who have the wherewithal no longer want to use the Nigerian currency, dollar becomes like the new trading. Maybe we should even change the naira into a dollar and let the American people give us their dollar as our own currency. That way we know that we don't have a currency in Nigeria and we just transact with dollar all through, rather than say we have a currency and everybody is beginning to feel like the Nigerian currency is insignificant, is inconsequential, is inferior compared to other currencies, because all of these activities further goes down to put pressure on the naira, on the Nigerian currency, and is not speaking well. So it's about time. Thankfully, we have a new CBN governor. The President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration has started a lot of transformation he intends to do with the Apex Bank. We do hope to see those transformations bringing about the much desired change to allow the Nigerian currency, float side by side, begin to appreciate when placed with the dollar and other national currency. Until that is done, we're still going to have this, kinds of conversation. But it's really horrible. It's really terrible. It's a sad scenario playing out for Nigeria, that we do not value our thing. We rather value things that are owned by others. And that consistently would be the undoing of Nigeria unless we change that mindset.
Well, the World Bank has blamed the re-emergence of the parallel currency exchange market in Nigeria on resistance toward the increasing pressure on the naira and the limited supply of forex at the official window. When the naira was floated, I remember that the bank, of course, gave a report with regards to the parallel exchange rate and the of June 2023. So we are seeing how our dependence on the dollar in Nigeria, the windows that we are seeing, the exchange windows for forex, and the fact that it is not even adequately available. We are seeing how it is also affecting the economic atmosphere of the country at this time. For a country that is largely dependent on imports, we are going to see how difficult it is going to be for people that are doing business. And also by the time you buy these goods and come into Nigeria at a very, in a layman's thought, it's more like $1 is selling almost to 1,000 naira at the same time, almost at that level at this time. So even if you go to a bank and here it's selling at 950, a Nigerian just does a calculation in the head that, I'm spending 1,000 naira, and that has gross impact on how much consumers are going to be able to have these goods when they eventually land. Now, when the World Bank is the one calling our attention to some of these activities, we do hope that the Central Bank of Nigeria will be able to review some of its policies, and let's see how we can call back some of the policies that we have released into the market, having seen the impact it has had over the window of time that we have allowed it to run. If we recall this and put new measures in place, will we be doing better economically in the country? Now, that's the question for the Central Bank of Nigeria and the leadership of this country in the economic sector to answer.
Will the Central Bank of Nigeria adhere to the warnings raised by the World Bank? Will they listen to the financial experts? Will they even take time to ponder on the comments coming from the World Bank and other financial institutions? That's a big question. And if we take our minds back to, the cash crunch, remember, prior to the launching of the new Naira, the redesigned Naira note, Nigerians made the move. The World Bank spoke against it. The World Trade Organization spoke against it. IMF spoke against it. Even the Minister of Finance in Nigeria spoke against it. But Godwin Emefiele and President Muhammadu Buhari, went ahead. They went ahead to release it. And today Nigerians are still suffering, the aftermath effect of that. Now we're seeing these comments coming from, the World Bank. We'll just have to, sit by and watch if the Central Bank of Nigeria under the new leadership will actually be different from that of Godwin Emefiele. But one of the ways that, professionals and experts in the economic sector have said or posited can be drastically used to address the scenarios that we are facing is for Nigeria to reduce importation and increase export. When you're earning a lot more in dollars and then, a little more is going out of your country, you are going to be able to normalize. And then, of course, your currency is going to be able to perform better. But when 80 to 90% of, your trading is you going out with the little one coming in, it is not commensurate. And as long as there is that wide margin, that big lacuna between your export and your import, the country's currency, the country's financial sector, the country's manufacturing sector is still going to suffer. Now we know that these conversations have been on. The Nigerian Export Promotion Council have been, is beginning to warm up to awareness, to campaigns, to reel out that consciousness into the minds of state governors and state leadership and that of this country towards the need for us to prioritize, products that can be exported outside the shores of Nigeria, towards investing in those areas. But of course, the conversations will also go down to, the part of politicians who would give, grants and loans that are meant for the real farmers, for the real manufacturers, to politicians who parade themselves as manufacturers, as farmers. And in the long run, this money gets, invested into things that does not benefit the nation in any way. So if we are going to get past this scenario, Nigerians believe it must come from the top. The leadership of this country under President Ahmed Bola Tinubu must realize that, the fight against corruption, the drive to change the financial sector and reposition it for better productivity is not just going to be another and must not be another political statement made on the pages of newspaper, made for media conversation. There must be a deliberate, intentional moves put in place to ensure that these things are done. Only then can we see the transformation. I mean, as far as the Nigerian Export Promotion Council is concerned, there is literally no state in this country who does not have 1, 2, 3 items that can be exported outside the shores of Nigeria, and that means generating foreign, revenue.
Exactly.
So why are we not having these respective states, 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, having these exports going out on a daily basis outside the shores of Nigeria? It goes back to what the government is doing. So when there is a correction on the part of government, the anomalies, the bureaucratic, hindrances and encumbrances on the part of government, once that is being removed, then we will be sure that Ahmed Bola Tinubu and this federal government are ready to see a transformation. And when we have a lot more export going out, then we're beginning to see, these changes. But beyond that, we also need to fix, our foreign reserve. And that goes back to the major contributor of Nigeria's revenue, the oil sector. The fight against oil theft, yes, is being improved upon, but let's get to see a lot more of not wasting Nigerian oil in the name of vessels loaded with crude oil, to actually seeing this being converted to save the nation's economy.
There's a lot to be worried about, but let's take one good news this morning before we head on to Mary Joseph. Of course, we have seen what the minister in charge of Interior is doing, the Minister of Interior Lubumi Tunjojo is doing some great work. I love his energy, and Nigerians have also applauded him very well this morning. Let us take some good news. Like I said, Olubumi Tunjojo has said that applicants who are putting in for their passport will now be able to receive same within just 2 weeks of applying. I know that in time past one would spend sometimes between 2 to 3 months to be able to get your passport done, but the Minister of Interior is saying that going forward it's going to take Nigerians just about 2 weeks. I remember something that trended a couple of weeks ago. He said it's not a privilege, to process passports, that it's actually the right of Nigerians to be able to process passports and get it on time. We remember that, I think it was earlier on in this week, where the agency had declared that every backlog that they had outstanding in terms of passport processing had been absolutely sorted. So it also just takes our mind to see that agencies and sectors in this country can actually work if the people at the helms of affairs and the people in these agencies decide that they are going to do right by the system. So Tunjo just seems to be a breath of fresh air where Interior is, concerned, especially with regards to passport related issues. But let us also see how he will bring on that energy to other Interior related, activities. But at this point, he has stated that no Nigerian would have to wait for more than 2 weeks for an international passport. Henceforth, he announced this in a press conference in Abuja while updating Nigerians on the status of the passport backlog in the country on Wednesday. Of course, it's for me, it's more of his language. No one.
It is maintained through. Nigerians don't get to wake on and say, "Oh, we were told 2 weeks," and you're told, "Oh, yeah, that was in the pages of the newspaper." The reality is that it cannot be done in 2 weeks. But it's a beautiful
I think that
thing.
also affects in terms of payments, because sometimes when you go onto the internet to find out how much the price of processing a passport is, by the time you get to the office, you're hearing, and I'm like, it doesn't tally. So please, Tunjojo, there's also a lot of fraudulent activities happening. Let us also check for immigration officers that are doing things against the service, because sometimes you come to do a passport, and the amount of money that you're spending is as opposed to what that the agency had posted to be done. But celebration 204,332 passport backlog have been cleared within how many weeks? Barely about a month since he was put in there as the leader of the Ministry of Interior. Great work.
Well, it's a great job, and we commend his job, and we do hope that it's sustained, and every other hindrances on the part of the agency is being addressed, so Nigerians can actually walk in and walk out with their national identity in real time, as posited by the minister. But this is where we're going to close the post and head out to Mary Joseph, who's standing by on our news desk to take us around latest happening from around the world. Just stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
As of state and government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian
for
today as
Spectrum
we want to
TV.
report for the lapses taken into counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief from Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with the reports that the federal government has put in place strategies to double the population of medical and dental doctors from 5,000 to 10,000 from the next academic year by increasing admission into the medical and dental institutions. This was disclosed by the Minister of State for Health and Social Welfare, Dr. Tunji Alausa, on Wednesday at the induction ceremony of foreign-trained medical and dental graduates by the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria in Abuja. Alausa said the exodus of licensed doctors and other health professionals to more developed countries would be discouraged by making the healthcare environment more attractive. Away from that, the federal government has said it would convert 10 million premium motor spirits vehicles to compressed natural gas in the next 36 months. In a statement on Wednesday, spokesperson for the Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Gas, Louise Iba, said the Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Gas, Ekwerikpe Ekpo, stated this while on a panel tagged Energy Talk at the ongoing ADIPEC 2023 conference and exhibition in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. According to the minister, the initiative was in partnership with the private sector. In a separate development, the Nigerian naira is among the worst performing currencies in Africa, the World Bank has said. It noted that the currency weakened by nearly 40% against the US dollar since a mid-June devaluation. The Global Bank explained in its report titled Africa's Pulse, an analysis of issues shaping Africa's economy future, October 2023, volume 28. It stated that so far this year, the Nigerian naira and the Angolan kwanza are among the worst performing currencies in the region. These currencies have posted a yet-to-date depreciation of nearly 40%. On the foreign scene, the U.S. has sent roughly 1.1 million bullets seized from the Iran last year to Ukraine, its military has said. The U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, which oversees operations in the Middle East, says the rounds were confiscated from a ship bound from Yemen in December. Ukraine's Western allies recently warned in their production lines were struggling to keep up with the rate at which Ukraine was using ammunition. And finally, in sport, Morocco will become the second African country to host a FIFA Football World Cup after South Africa in 2010. The football's world governing body announced on Wednesday, October 4th, that the North African Kingdom, together with Portugal and Spain, will be joint hosts for the 2030 World Cup. This comes 1 week after Morocco was awarded the hosting of the 2025 AFCON. Moroccans in the streets of Rabat welcomed the news. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rising Channel where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. To have a wonderful morning.
Secretary General, delegates.
This will be Lagos, Nigeria today as we want to improve fertilizer safety in Two County.
Welcome back and thanks for joining us. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, on Rise and Shine, we discuss Nigeria and other related issues happening around the world. Mary Joseph just brought us tidbits of global news, but before we went on the news brief desk, we saw certain conversations on the platform this morning. The fact that the Senate is probing alleged killings of about 250 Nigerians and some others incarcerated in Ethiopia. The Senate has moved a motion to investigate that particular allegation. We also see the fact that the commandant of the NSCDC and the FCT has warned officers against the misuse of firearms. Some other conversations we had this morning is the fact that the CBN has given a report that the e-Naira stands as a threat to financial stability in the country. Big questions are being asked when the CBN gave that particular policy for the e-Naira to be initiated. Didn't they think it through? Black currency exchange market is back in Nigeria, and the World Bank is saying that this is a problem for the economy of the country. The fact that we are having currencies float at parallel in the economy is a big problem for the country. Some other information that we looked at this morning is the fact that the Minister for Interior Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo has cleared out about over 200,000 backlog of passport-related issues in the country and has told Nigerians that going forward, passport issuance and processing will take Nigerians only 2 weeks. These are some of the conversations we've had so far on the platform of Rise and Shine this morning. To catch up on all that and more of the conversations we've had, please do well to follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find at SpectrumTv.ng. On our YouTube channel, you'll be able to catch up on all the conversations real time. At this point, we take a quick swipe at the front pages of our national dailies as we bring you Daily Spotlight.
Well, on Daily Spotlight this morning, we are starting off from the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. And on Vanguard this morning, the kicker says states split over federal government's 35,000 wage award to federal workers. That story is on page number 5 of the Vanguard newspaper, and the writer says, will key into federal government's template Enugu, Edo, Ondo, Ekiti, Kebbi, Delta, Oyo, Adamawa, others to negotiate with workers. Federal government can dictate to us what to pay. Niger government. That story is on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the front page of Vanguard this morning, we also see presidency Atiku disagree over certificate Tinubu submitted to INEC. The story is on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the front page of Vanguard, we see CJN to judges, we must rise above temptations, trials. That story is on page 9 of Vanguard this morning. Terrorists abduct 5 varsity students in Katsina, 1 suspect arrested. Story is on page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper. 22 drowned as boat capsized in Niger, 6 bodies recovered. A story still on page 6. Senate screens confirms 3 additional ministers for Tinubu as Lawal slums. That story is on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the front page of Vanguard, court martial declares a major general guilty of $1.476 million theft. That story is on page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper, and World Bank paints gloomy picture of growth in Nigeria. Others, page 19, has the story. Mobad Court remands Naira Marley, Sam Larry, 2 others. That story is on page 7. Those are the major stories you'll find on the front page of Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Moving on from the Vanguard newspaper, we are going to head straight now to the Nigerian Tribune. Big story on the front page of Nigerian Tribune says how Nigeria, other African countries can avert a lost decade, says World Bank. Projects 2.9% growth for Nigeria's economy. 12 million young Africans entering labor market each year. Page 6 is where you can find details. When you have 12 million young Africans entering the labor market, we have to look at how many million vacancies that we have available for the working populace, and this is going to be a growing problem on our hands. But we also see here public opinion cannot override constitutional provisions, says CJN. Applicants will now get passports in 2 weeks, says Minister of Interior. Of course, some of the conversations we've had this morning. NRC suspends workers who collected cash from passengers on board Lagos Ibadan train. Page 3. Mobad court orders remand of Naira Marley and Sam Larry. Page 15 is where you can find details of that. Reps probe 22 billion Naira Lagos Sango Abeokuta Road reconstruction contract. Page 30 is where you can find details. We also have here bandits abduct 5 federal university students in Katsina. Page 16. Sad turn of events in recent times, of course. 2 killed, many injured. Residents flee in renewed Ilobo communal clash. This is happening somewhere in Osun State. We do hope that it does not escalate. Visa ban. UAE officials arrive to continue meeting with Nigeria today. Page 25. Scare as Kaduna ministerial nominee slums during screening. Senate confirms him 2 others. Page 5 is where you can find the details of that, and that's all we have on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
And next up this morning is the front page of the Nation newspaper. The kicker there says agreement with organized labor to curse federal government 2 trillion naira. 89,100 workers likely to get Miss 35,000 naira wage award. How VAT cut on diesel will affect economy. Of course, that's the major story on the front page of the Nation this morning. We'll also see Tinubu's certificate in order. CSU deposits in court. Still on the front page of the Nation, we find Senate bars new members from top post. Diphtheria, FCT 18 states may bring back face masks. UK, US to partner federal government on marine blue economy. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nation this morning.
Next up this morning is going to be the Daily Trust newspaper. Big story: farmers varsity students abducted in Borno and Katsina. Save Taraba from bandits. Government begs army chief. Reps ask army police to deploy personnel to Katsina. There's a rising spate of insecurity around the country, and when we see that the security agencies in Nigeria are also reporting certain successes that they're garnering together, we're just wondering how it's more like it's a hydra-headed dragon that we're having to deal with all at the same time. We do hope that help is going to come to the abducted persons in Borno, Katsina. Let's not even forget the 8 core members that were abducted on their way to youth service camp in Sokoto. Those are all conversations that are still yet to be sorted. Well, we also see here that Senate confirms ministerial nominee who collapsed during screening and 2 others. Mobad, of course, Naira Marley Larry remanded as police declare childhood friend wanted. Flood displaces 563 persons in Adamawa. E-ticketing delay threatens 22 billion naira revenue on Lagos Ibadan Itakpe trains. Niger records 53 deaths from 6 boat mishaps in 1 month. We also have here hazy weather unsettles drivers, asthmatic patients in Maiduguri. Wow. Page 11. is where you can find details of that story. Certificates Tinubu presented to INEC not in our possession, says CSU. Atiko's lawyers quiz varsity registrar. President's aide dismisses forgery allegation. That's all we have on the front page of the Daily Trust.
Well, next up this morning is the front page of Daily Times newspaper. And on the Daily Times, the front page, the kicker says Chicago State University certificate presidency opens up, waves of claim of forgery against Tinubu. Of course, still on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. Mobad, House assures on securing paying compensation royalties to family. That is on page 2. Still on the front page of Daily Times, Nigerian stock market admit 220 billion naira public infrastructure fund. Of course, still on the front page of Daily Times this morning, we also see international passports to be ready within 2 weeks. That's according to the federal government. How we cleared backlog of 204,332 applications in record time by minister. Go and collect your passports. No bribery. Okay. That is a very big comment statement coming from the minister there. You find that story on page 5 of the Daily Times newspaper. And still on the front page of Daily Times, we see a joint gang at 7 kills 6 persons. 14-year-old confesses. How terrific, how terrific. That's on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. And just as we wrap up the front page of the Daily Times this morning, we see you cannot forge what you have, Aso Rock says. A certificate presented to INEC, not from us, CSU official. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Daily Times. And to wrap it up, Senate throws into confusion as ministerial nominee slumps still confirmed. That story is on page 10.
Well, our very last paper for this morning is going to be the Punch newspaper. I'm looking at the front page of the Punch this morning. Economic crisis. States borrow 46 billion naira from banks to pay salaries. Where are we headed? Access, Fidelity, Zenith lend state 46 billion naira in 6 months as governors battle poor IGR. Internally generated revenue is a problem in our state. Okay. Fiscal responsibility. Commission issues guidelines to banks on lending to state and MDAs. Judgments based on constitution and not public opinion, says CJN. We also have here Chicago University vindicates Tinubu. Presidency insists. Atiku files documents today. Page 2. It's more like it's the word of the presidency versus that of the CSU at this time, and what Nigerians are seeing in real time. When you say that Chicago University vindicates Tinubu, presidency insists, you're wondering which vindication comes when the CSU is saying that the result that was tendered by the president is not something that was generated from their university. How does that now vindicate the president? Big questions this morning, of course. We also see here that the federal government to convert 10 million PMS vehicles to CNG. These are some of the promises and conversations we are still having. Page 24 is where you can find details of that story. We can see here that the Naira is among Africa's worst currencies. It's falling by 40%, says the World Bank. 5 Casino University students kidnapped, police nab informant. Page 8. Teacher's car crushes pupil to death in Lagos school. Page 4 and 5 is where you can find details. That's a rather really sad story. The very last one this morning, of course, ministerial nominee faints. Journalist dies in National Assembly shuttle. Page 7 is where you can find details of that very sad story again on the front page of the Punch newspaper. But these are the plethora of stories that we have this morning in our faces. Naira among Africa's worst currency falls by 40%. I mean, it's more like the currency has just a 50% chance of survival. 40 is we are falling by 40%. That's a whole lot of problem.
Well, there's a whole lot of problems, but of course we'll return to really dwell on this conversation. I know that one of the things that Nigerians are really reacting to is the fainting drama that happened at the National Assembly during the ministerial screening yesterday. We'll just draw more on that, but shortly after this time out. To stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. It's still Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live on Spectrum TV. Of course, we're beaming live from you, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. We always encourage you to join the conversations on our socials, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng, to be part of the conversation. Of course, the phone numbers are on your screen, so you can be part of the conversation. What is your take on the drama that played out at the National Assembly yesterday? Now, we know that a lot of conversations are being, have at this moment. There are the school of thought that Bala Rebe, the ministerial nominee that fainted during screening yesterday, was on fasting. And Nigerians have asked, how many days fasting was he on that, just standing within a few hours to answer questions at the National Assembly would lead to his slumming? And there are also questions bordering on his health. If it is fasting, Nigerians believe fasting should not have allowed Balarebe to slum while fielding questions from the members of the National Assembly. Does he have an underlying health challenge that Nigerians need to know about the incoming new minister who have just been confirmed? Well, before we jump into that conversation, let's take a quick peek into what played out at the National Assembly as of yesterday and the comment coming after that shortly.
He's a seasoned administrator from his resume as presented. He's also somebody who has understudied the
Mr. Wait. Can you say water? Give me water. Water and sugar. Water and sugar. Get sugar, and water. Is there any, where is Dr. Wale? Can the camera see immediately? Water.
He's a seasoned administrator from his resume as presented. He's also somebody who has understudied the
Of course, this is a rather sad situation yesterday, and it threw the Senate into a pandemonium of some sort, as you can rightly see there. All of the senators, including the Senate presidents, clamoring, water and sugar, to be able to resuscitate the gentleman who had just, slumped in their view. It just shows you the other side of humanity, and, in terms of me just thinking of the Senate president responding in that manner, calling for the doctor to be immediately brought forward. But like you had rightly said, Balarabe had said he had received the news of his nomination just a day before, more like a night before, and he had to pull an all-nighter to be able to get his documents together, get all of the information that he would need to stand before the the Senate committee. So he's saying that this was more like a result of some form of exhaustion. But let's give voice to his response to the incident at plenary yesterday. Response to the of course that's incident that happened at the Senate House while he was being screened. Of course, it was immediately after his presentation. He had put forth his presentation. He was even being hallowed, celebrated by some member, of the House from Kaduna State, and then he was about to start receiving questions from the senators when, the incident actually occurred. So Balarabe has given an explanation saying that the all-nighter that he pulled, probably had taken a toll on his body, and that's why he slumped at the event. Of course, he said there were so many things to do which he attended to throughout the night, and we probably didn't, like the Senate President said, giving water and sugar probably had just been and then these people are advanced in age. He probably had woken up, rushed into the whole thing. Did he have time to take proper breakfast, to just regulate his body before that kind of event? And you also know that people are going to be under all kinds of tension when that is going on. But then one of the biggest questions then again is going to be the question of his health. How healthy is he to be able to take on this responsibility that the federal government, as led by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is putting on him? Like we have seen on the front pages of our papers this morning, he has been confirmed as a Minister of the Federal Republic in spite of the incident. Of course, he's on his 2 feet, as of several hours after that event. But the question of his health is still going to be something that Nigerians are going to be concerned about.
Well, like you rightly stated, if there is anything that this, crisis, or should we call it a circumstance or eventuality of Balarabe fainting during the screening has shown to Nigerians, is that, well, contrary to the widely held perception that the National Assembly are just people who think about themselves, maybe perhaps they also have that humane part that allows them to think about other people. Because if there was no part of humanity on them that cares about the next person, the likes of the Senate President would not have to stand up from his exalted seat as a Senate President to try and attempt, to Balarabe on the floor there. So that shows a whole lot and passes a whole lot of positive message about not just the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, but the entirety of the National Assembly members. I remember Senator Ekpeyon from Cross River State was like the first person to literally, jump up from his seat in an attempt. You can see him in black there, attempting to offer help to Balarabe. That goes to show that, these individuals also have a human heart. And maybe Nigerians need to prick a lot more the human, part of these National Assembly members for us to get to see the kinds of legislations that we want and deserve to have in Nigeria for all-round development. But then, the question of Balarabe's health is going to be definitely a serious concern. And we do hope that he's going to be able to tell Nigerians confidently that this was just maybe a matter of exhaustion. But of course, even the argument that is put forward, having to rush, having to stress and all of that, Nigerians would ask, it is not just yesterday. You didn't just wake up to the news that, you've been nominated for a ministerial appointment. It is not just, within 24 hours that you have.
But that's the report that Balarabe actually put forward.
No, it's not. I mean, we know when Ahmed Bola Tinubu sent a letter to the National Assembly. It was in the news, and within then and yesterday that all of this played out, it was more than 48 hours, more than 72 hours. So you can't say that is the scenario. Are you not listening to the news? Were you not informed? Were you not giving the notice? So this could just be another excuse, and Nigerians are really worried about the comment coming from Balarabe. But beyond that, we do hope he's going to be able to prove to Nigerians that, yes, as far as his health is concerned, he's very fit for the job. But even if he has health challenges, Nigerians know there is literally, there's some things that people can have, absolute control over, and health is one of such. I mean, even a young person can actually walk around and not really be healthy. So it's not about age, it's not about the personality. Even if Balarabe happens to have a health challenge or a laying health challenge, the fact that he is able to manage it, if he is able to manage it and still be able to do his job, then Nigerians are not going to have a problem with him. Where Nigerians will have a problem with him is when he hides under the umbrella that I'm very healthy, and then months into his, being given a portfolio, we are beginning to see an off and off fluctuating kind of presence from him as a Minister of Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is when Nigerians are going to have issues with him. But on the whole, it's a beautiful thing that, one person was resuscitated and it's back, but of course it's a sad scenario. The alleged report that a journalist actually did pass away as a result of all of the things that happened yesterday. We've not gotten an official comment from the Senate yet as to what actually transpired or whether indeed the journalist is at this point is an alleged, and we do hope to see that If it did happen, the National Assembly will be transparent and sincere to Nigerians to tell us what exactly happened and what steps the National Assembly is taking to address that issue. But of course, coming back to our very own primary constituency, Akwa Ibom State, the administration of Governor Pastor Omoino has been touted to be one that is very intentional and deliberate in some of the actions, that the governor is taking. Remember, just after the governor came into power, we had the Akwa Ibom dialogue, the first of its kind, where the governor gathered technocrats, gathered people across party lines, all the Akwa Ibom sons and daughters, and of course, conversations about navigating their rise agenda, further expanding on it, and strengthening some areas. Were held at the prestigious Ibom Icon Hotel and Golf Resort. And of course, after that Ibom dialogue, a lot of persons said the governor was really deliberate in not just being the one who puts together the policy direction and guideline for his administration, but also allows the experts in the different subsectors of his focus to also make contributions in the overall best interest of Akwa Ibom people. Well, we see that the governor is currently leading the ESCOs in Lagos State for setting the agenda for the Rise agenda, which is the blueprint of his administration and what he intends to use in working. We see that the Akwa Ibom State Executive Council Rise Agenda Implementation Strategy Retreat, and the theme of it is a Rise Agenda Mapping the Future. Now we saw that within the course of that retreat, a lot has been done. We saw the likes of the immediate past governor, His Excellency Udomi Manuel, giving a speech and charging the EXCOs to give all of their support to Governor Pastor Omoino. We saw other key speakers. The governor himself spoke to the ESCO members. The Deputy Governor, Distinguished Senator Akone Yanyi there, spoke to the ESCO members. And of course, just looking at the highlight of the expected impact, it cuts across the different subsectors that have been captured in the Rise agenda.
It's important when we have our leaders, sit through and have, think tank approaches. And we've continued to see how the governor of the state is using that chief executive officer perspective, having come from the private sector. He's really using that perspective as a leader, as an approach, to how he's moving on with his state executive members, commissioners, and, he recently appointed about 368 persons as aides in the state government, and putting them in one room to discuss through and through the blueprints and the things that he has on his Arise agenda for the state. It's really going to help them to unanimously have one vision and put their goals in perspective to be able to achieve the ultimate goal of the governor, which is the Arise agenda. When you look at the Arise agenda, you're seeing how he wants to make sure that governance reaches the grassroots, and which has also been interpreted in some of the ways that he has gone about his appointment in recent times. We're also seeing how the governor is, he wants to engage the youth in the state government. The Arise agenda is covering agriculture, it's covering businesses, small, medium scale enterprises. I think it was just last week that they had this Ignite conference where they brought young persons in the state together, and Akwa Ibom State leading sons and daughters in other industries around the country came in to speak to Akwa Ibom sons and daughters, just to be able to amplify the fact that as a state we can actually do this. So having a leaders retreat is one thing that is very necessary. A leader will not be able to succeed if his followers do not understand what he sees. So I think this retreat is one of those agendas that the governor has said, guys, let's stay together. When we say we have an Arise agenda, what are the modules, operandi? What are the modules that we are going to put in place to be able to achieve this? Is this even possible in the next 4 years? Can we be able to deliver on the promises that we made to the Akwa Ibom people when we were campaigning? So these are some of the activities, that we rightly saw there in, the retreat that he had. And would we also clamor that other leaders, other governors, even the presidency, will consider having these kinds of, activities with the leadership, so that we are not running, helter-skelter. At the end of the day, we realize that as a government, we did not achieve anything. But on the side, yes, this is a good move. But we know that we have a problem of implementation in the country. It's a big problem. It's like a cancer that has eaten into the fabrics of our country. Beyond having the dialogue that the governor held sometime, I think 2 months ago now, when he came into the office, he also had the dialogue, got people from different sectors in the country to still more like rejigging the whole, Arise agenda thing. But we must also begin to see how the governor is going to take all of his meetings and specialized sessions that he has had and let them tailor it into implementation of the Arise agenda, and so that at the end of the day, Akwa Ibom will indeed be able to clap, for some of the different styles that he has brought into governance, which must be in the first place applauded.
Well, of course, we can't afford to not commend the governor in the steps that
Absolutely
he has taken so far. He has made some very critical comments that, going by the actions being taken so far, might seem that the governor is ready to actually follow through with this comment.
Exactly.
He's also stated that, political appointees will be reviewed after 6 months to see the level of performance. So if the governor is actually able to follow through with those policy statements that he has made, if we get to a point where political appointees know that in 6 months, your activities in the ministries or the portfolio you've been given will be reviewed by persons you have no control over, and then judging from and based on the result or the report of that review, you can risk losing your portfolio, you can risk losing your office, you can risk being, replaced by another person. Then we will see political appointees being a lot more intentional and deliberate. I think that will bring about the much desired healthy competition, where I think it was during the Akwa Ibom's administration that we had some level of competition between the State Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Art and Culture, Culture and Tourism, and other related ministries like that. It was literally like Victor Ontai was trying to outsmart the next commissioner in the ministry, and then we had different activities coming out from different ministries. It was a healthy competition. So if we can have Governor Pastor Umoino being able to intentionally monitor and evaluate, have a team set up to monitor and evaluate the activities, the programs, the implementation on the part of the respective political appointees, then we will begin to see a lot of positive results coming from that, because that would mean putting these political appointees on their toes. And it's consistently stated, I think even yesterday before leaving for the gathering, he had said those who have been appointed, the 368 appointees or PAs, must reside in their words. They must reside there, and they must be the ambassador, living by example, representing the governor at their respective ward. So, of course, he also reiterated the fact that if you are found one thing, not residing in your ward and not living by example, then you risk losing the appointment. Of course, we know nobody wants to be, you have bread and butter placed in your mouth, and because of one inaction on your part, you lose it. A lot of persons won't want to do it. No sensible person will want to do it. So we do hope that, this policy statement gets translated into implementation, and we get to see the kind of leadership that Governor Pastor Umoino is touting himself to be. And then in the next 3 years, wrapping up, beginning to count down to the end of his tenure as the governor of Akwa Ibom State, we should be able to look back and see the transformation that the Rise Agenda blueprint must have done. But then it must be followed through with the strongest of political will, the strongest of non-favoritism, of course, not submitting to other party interests. Of course, the governor stated consistently that he would rather fulfill the interests of Akwa Ibomites rather than fulfill the interests of a few party faithfuls who are even threatening him with not giving him a second term. Of course, if he has a very good, successful first term, making impact on the lives of Akwa Ibomites, they are going to give him the mandate.
Decide, of course. Akwa Ibomites will be the ones to decide. We've seen the governor put forth a very strong faith, and having a strategy and implementation retreat is one good step in the right direction. Let's see how this is interpreted into real-time work in the state. And I like the fact that the new appointees know that they are all on probation. All eyes on the appointees in Akwa Ibom State. Exactly. So if they do not, they do not show working, if they do not please the governor in terms of, being active. The other day we're talking about after the information of 368 persons came out, you stay in your house for 3 days, come out 2 days, and you say that you're the PA to the PA of the PA. Now you have to get work done. and being at the rural level, we are going to see a lot more results if these kinds of blueprints are interpreted. But let's, say thank you to Mr. Governor and Pastor Umoino of Akwa Ibom State for some of the steps that he's taken in Akwa Ibom. We do hope that, the spotlight that has been on our state in the last couple of years, starting all the way back from when we had, Senator Obon Godswill Akpabio as governor at the time, continues to experience an increase. Thank you to the likes of Obon Victor Atta that gave them the blueprint upon which they are running on. But now we are exporting everything that we have in goodness to the rest of the world, and Akwa Ibom is definitely a destination. But that's where we're going to lay rise and shine to rest this morning. It's been so good doing this with you this very blessed Thursday morning. Of course, thank you for being a part of the community. Like, share, comment across all our social media platforms, and let's get the word out of everything that we're doing here on Spectrum Television. Thank you. Until tomorrow, when we return to your screens, my name is Uyai Aneka.
And I am Francis Oyemada. Do enjoy the rest of your day.